Alright, now that we have the Jak and Daxter marathon done and over with, let's move on to one of my favorite SNES games, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I thought since I never looked at a Zelda game before on this channel, I thought I should look at one of my favorites. Now before we start, I am not exactly what you would call a Zelda enthusiast. I do think that they're quality games, but they're not something I would play religiously over and over again. I would play and beat once and wait a couple of months and see if I still like it. But anyway, let's see if Link to the Past still holds up today. I don't have a physical copy to show. I'm playing this off the Nintendo Switch Online, so. A Link to the Past is an action-adventure game released back in 1991, was the franchise's first jump into 16-bit, which is no easy feat, especially how you see that when the franchise first started out. Lots of Zelda fans, myself included, hold this game to a high pedestal. Last time I played this game was back in September of last year. I remember having a lot of fun with it. I actually used to thought that this game was just as good, if not better, than Super Mario World. That was months ago. Anyway, this game is one of the most critically acclaimed titles in the Zelda series, selling 4.61 million copies, making it the third best-selling Zelda game, right next to Ocarina of Time and even Breath of the Wild. Now let's get on to the plot. Now before we start, Zelda's overarching plot throughout the handhelds and consoles are a complete cluster. It's not as complicated as, say, Kingdom Hearts, but it comes very close. Even after the release of Hyrule Historia in 2011, people are still trying to glue the pieces together. If you guys are curious, A Link to the Past takes place around the same time as Link's Awakening since Link is on his journey. Whatever that means. In the land of Hyrule, there is a legend that there is a golden power in the hidden land. Many people have tried so hard to get to the so-called golden land, but all have failed. But suddenly, an evil force known as Aghanim started to overflow the Golden Realm. When the king finds out about this, he orders the 7 wise men to seal the land of the Golden Power, and Aghanim reacts to this by incinerating the king.
Well, damn, that's pretty morbid.
Anyway, Aghanim makes the rest of the wise men vanish and kidnaps the Princess Zelda. We go over to Link's house where his uncle tells him not to go outside, but Zelda contacts Link telepathically to help her get out of the Ganon's dungeon, so he walks out of the house anyway, and he finds his uncle dying on the floor, so he gives him his sword to fend off himself. He saves Princess Zelda and manages to escape from Ganon's dungeon. Zelda informs that in order to defeat Aghanim, he needs to find a Master Sword and put an end to Aghanim's madness, but he needs to prove himself worthy by collecting all 3 pendants. Zelda telepathically calls Link to the Sanctuary, informing that the soldiers of Hyrule have arrived. Link arrives to the Sanctuary moments after the soldiers have vanished, where he learns that the dying priest, that Zelda has been taken to Hyrule Castle. Link goes to rescue her, but he arrives too late. Aghanim sends Zelda to the Dark World, and after a very easy boss fight, Link goes out to the Dark World to save the 7 maidens that are scattered throughout the Dark World. After doing so, Link confronts Ganon for a final battle, and emerges victorious. Link earns the Triforce of Courage, transfers the Light Sword back, revives the king, and puts the Master Sword back where it belongs, and it sleeps again forever. The story is a lot more sophisticated than the last 2 games. I don't really mind it, I just think it just needs to be there because it has to be there. I can't really tell you my opinion because I don't really have one. Alright, with the story out of the way, let's finally get into the gameplay. You assume control of Link, and the name of the game is to get the Master Sword, complete dungeons, and die. We went back to the overhead view for this game, so no side-scrolling. Link himself is more of a mobile fighter than previous incarnations. For starters, you can now move in 8 different directions instead of just 4, so you can't run into enemies by accident. He can swing his sword like an actual sword instead of just stabbing enemies, and to top it all off, Link also does this new spin attack which has really decent range and nice coverage, and is very useful with the boss in the 3rd palace. He can also pick up items and throw them at enemies, which really isn't that interesting, but it is kind of funny throwing a pot at the guard. When he's at full health and when he gets the Master Sword, he can also throw this projectile with his sword, which is really useful, which makes it even more disheartening to lose it. He also gets lots of upgrades throughout the game, like the Cane of Samaria, boomerangs, and Power Glove. Important ones are the Book of Medusa, which helps you read ancient writing to get power-ups. The story-driven power-ups are the Master Sword, the Pearl Moon, and the Magic Mirror. You get the Master Sword at the later half of the game once you collect all the pendants. The Magic Mirror is your reward by helping a man going through the dark. It helps you get through the later half of the game by collecting heart pieces or going to a different location easier. What I really like about the Dark World is that a lot of things are different from the Light World. What could be a desert in the Light World can be a swamp in the Dark World. What could be your house in the Light World can be a bomb shop in the Dark World. The Pearl Moon helps you withstand the power of the Dark World, because you see, Link can't handle the force of the Dark World, and without it otherwise, he turns into a pink bunny. My favorite would have to be the hook shot. You can grab onto ledges and platforms and grab on the items far away, or kill enemies faster or immobilize them. The Bombos power-ups are pretty good too. The active screen that kills everyone in sight. You also get clothing upgrades like the Red Mail, which makes your Link take less damage, and this huge ass shield, which is way bigger than Link himself. Pegasus boots really make traveling through Hyrule a lot faster. Speaking of Hyrule, it's a lot more colorful and alive than the first two games. Every area is more distinctable from everything else, and supporting the graphical update, everything just pops out. With the Dark World, Link to the Past might be even bigger than Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 combined. Despite how big this game is, it's actually really hard to get lost in this game because the map always tells you where I have to go next. In fact, after playing this game only one time, I actually memorized almost everything about Hyrule, where to go, where to bomb, etc. Dungeons are back in full circle, or palaces if you live in North America. There are 10 dungeons, or 11 if you count the final battle with Ganon, and they're all pretty fun to navigate, although you really have to use your head to find the really hidden stuff in palaces. The bosses, on the other hand, have gotten really daunting since the last game. Some of these guys hit like a tank, but I think my favorite boss would have to be the one in the final palace. When I played this game for the first time, I forgot to upgrade my magic meter to 1.5, so when I finally defeat the ice and fire snakes for the first time without upgrading my magic meter, I felt so accomplished. I really have no life. The one in Skullwood is pretty cool too, although my least favorite boss fight will have to be this asshole in the third palace. If he hits you, you bounce off of him like a rubber ball, and if you fall off the platform, you have to fight him again where his health restocks. Or, if you're playing the Nintendo Switch Online version, you can just rewind back before you die. In which, if you die, you just restart the palace from the beginning and you have all your health restocked. Or if you have a fairy on you, the fairy can revive you back from death, which is really cool mechanic, but I honestly just rewind every time I die, so I don't really use it that much. The structure of the Dark World is non-linear to an extent. You still have to beat the first palace first, but after that, you can go anywhere you want. Personally, I do it in order so I don't miss any power-ups. This is where the game sort of gets more difficult as you progress. Like I said, some of the bosses hit like a tank, and some of the enemies, especially in the Dark World, can get so much of your health, and wall masters are so annoying. If you're standing in one place for too long, they can grab you and put you back. If you're standing in one place for too long, they can grab you and put you back in the start of the dungeon. But compared to Zelda 1 and Zelda 2, this difficulty is mostly fair. Some dungeons in this half at least can be really complicated. Even though it was very confusing for me for the first time, I think the one in Skullwoods has to be my favorite. I really like how you have to use your head to get into the palace. But if there's one palace I can't stand for the life of me, it's the goddamn Ice Palace. This palace took me the longest. There's ice everywhere, conveyor belts, this stupid ass puzzle that took me more than an hour to complete on my first try. And yes, I know I can use the Game of Samaria to make this puzzle more easier, but I forgot to, so just piss off, alright? Anyway, when the 7 maidens open the seal for the final level, which is nowhere near as difficult as the Great Palace from Zelda 2 or Ganon's dungeon in Zelda 1, I mean, still pretty hard, but it's more fair. At the end of the palace, Aghanim awaits you, and he really doesn't put any more of a challenge than before. And considering that you're more pimped out now, it just makes the encounter even more pathetic. Then the real final boss Ganon appears, which really isn't that hard. It's more annoying if anything. The first half isn't really that bad, but it's the second phase where you constantly have to light the flames so you can see him. And just like Zelda 1, you have to use the Silver Arrow again to defeat Ganon, which this game hits better than the first game, but I didn't know playing for the first time, so I had to go back to the bomb shop and pip out my bow and arrow. And just like the boss in the third palace, if you fall off the platform, you have to restart the boss all over again where his health restacks. Is what I would say if I didn't fall off the platform once. Now let's talk about side quests. Personally, I never really bothered unless it was temper my sword, heart pieces, or items that help me in combat. A lot of them could be time consuming. Getting your sword tempered is a side quest you can do by getting 2 blacksmiths back together. Before you do that, you have to give a chest to someone in the light world. Heart pieces is how you explain your health. Some of them could be as simple as racing to the clock in 15 seconds, or lifting a rock above your head. A lot of them you really need to use your head for, like switching throughout the light and dark world to bomb walls. Anyway, let's talk about the soundtrack. In my opinion, this game has the best soundtrack in any Zelda game. Every music piece is orchestrated so well. The Hyrule theme is way more upbeat than any game before it ever was. The dungeon theme really feels more scarier, and the Kakariko Village theme is one of the most peaceful songs ever composed in a video game. There's just so much more variety in this soundtrack, from the whistling in the Lost Woods, and to that great victory jingle that really makes you feel like you accomplished something. The graphics, in my opinion, have aged exponentially well. Everything just looks so much smoother than the first two games combined. Hyrule is so much more colorful than before, and the Dark World design really fits the name, and the Light World is so much vibrant. So in conclusion, I love this game. Sure, I might not have an opinion on the story, and some of the dungeons aren't really my favorites, but in my opinion, gameplay takes up 75% of the experience for me. I really think that this is one of the best SNES games, and it's definitely my favorite Zelda game. I know people will say Ocarina of Time or Breath of the Wild is better, but honestly, that's just how I feel. Link to the Past just feels like a massive 180 compared to Zelda 1 and 2. This game is more fun, it's streamlined, and nothing's too cryptic. I know hardcore gamers wouldn't like that, but I like it. If you want to get into Zelda games, I recommend you start with this one. I think this game gives an experience that anyone, not only Zelda fans, can enjoy. You know, it was really nice revisiting this game, finding all the secrets and heart pieces and all that other stuff. But that's all I have to say about this game. So, next review, all I'm going to say is that it's on an N64 platformer. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And also, if you're catching this on release date, I'm going to be streaming this on TV on my Twitch channel. That's that's twitch.tv SuperSonicMaster17. So, hope you guys look forward to that. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.